Russ. Enjoyed your lesson. I don't know much about Russ, but I know we're big time different because of your story on roller coaster. He doesn't want to bring his friends. He's telling you not to go. I'm the opposite. I love roller coasters. I would invite you to come with me, and I'd like all my friends to share this very much. In fact, the last time I went to Six Flags was about 30 years ago in Atlanta, and I wanted my wife and my brother-in-law and daughter-in-law, not daughter-in-law, brother-in-law and sister-in-law, to be able to ride this roller coaster with me, and they wouldn't do it. And so I went ahead and rode it myself, and all day long I just kept saying, "Oh, come on, it's not bad. Come on, go with me, come on." I said it was easy. So I rolled my hands up, and there's a little 12-year-old boy rode beside me, and he didn't even bat an eye, you know, there's nothing to it. And after all day, they decided to do it. And they got on there and they locked them in, and I said, "I lied." So we have to notice a little bit of difference there. But I appreciate the lesson that we had this morning about that wind and God's ability to calm the storm. I've been in a lot of storms in my life. I'm 63, and I can tell you from just my life experience that God will never let you down. He will never leave you. There will be storms, and there will be rough times and dark days around us. There'll be all kinds of days you question, wonder what's going on, where are you, God? But I can stand this day before you and say that He has never, never left me. Yeah. If you read your scriptures and you read all the stories about the men and women we know and respect in the Bible, you look what they wrote, what they did, and you know that God is there. We just need to trust Him and learn the patience and the lessons we need to learn when those tough times happen. I remember many times in my life where there's some very, very bad things going on. Not only health-wise, things in China. 2.5 years ago, I had police surrounding me. I've had 12 co-workers arrested. The day that I got, they were chasing after me. I got on the bus and I thought it was the last time I got to work in China. I really thought that in my heart. I prayed, I cried on that bus, 12-hour ride, tried to get away from there as fast as I could. And there was a peace, be still, that came across me when I realized it's not about me. It doesn't depend on me. China or any other place in this world, the work, any church, anything I do. God will get it done. Amen. Whatever He wants done. And there was a peace that came over me, just quieted me down. And I was actually, it built my faith so much to realize I had faith. That God is there, I really believe that. And the truth is that when I calmed down and I got to Guangzhou and I called some Christians there, I said, "I'm here, unexpected. Here's what happened. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'll be here. Give me a day to pray and think about it and tell people to come." And the rest of that trip, didn't get any trouble, and there were great things that God did in totally rearranging the schedule that took place. And I've seen that happen many times in my life and the lives of other people. I just wanted to share that with you to give you the courage to do what's right, whatever it is. In your family situation, your job situation, people lose their jobs, all kind of crises and storms and waves come at us all the time. And just be still. Have peace in your heart. Read your Bible. Get good counseling, good advice from those Christians that aren't in that bottom of that wave right now. I can see a little bit clearer, remind you of things of the past that God has done for you. That's what we need to do. Use your past events in your life. You go back to Jeremiah's life, but you go back in your life. And you mark down how God got you through it. And when that next storm comes, you remember that. It's how you keep your faith. Now, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Just a little bit about myself and the work. I started going to China 20 years ago, in 1991, actually. It'll be 21 years in September. Things were much different then. There was very great harshness and severe persecution. Between 1949 and 1980, you would be killed for owning the Bible. Bibles were confiscated, burned. People went to prison for that. There were terrible times. I've met people myself that served 18 years in prison from 1962 to 1980 for nothing more than just preaching Jesus Christ. I met a young lady named Mary. She was 93 years old. She, in the Cultural Revolution in the 1970s, spent 7 years in a Chinese prison simply because she taught the gospel of Jesus Christ, and they poured scalding hot water down her throat to try to get her to renounce Jesus Christ. I met another man who had been in prison, and they kicked him out of prison because he kept converting the prisoners. Nice. I have been honored. I am humbled by the people I know and can tell you about. When I first went, when you went over there, you took Bibles in. I would wrap them in my underwear and try to cover them up a little bit. They didn't have the X-ray machines at that time. They usually would go in your bags and put their hands down and check for things. I remember the first sign that I saw when I entered China was no Bibles, no pornography on the same sign. Those together. And you do a lot of praying because you get sent home. They don't throw you in jail when you go over there as a foreigner. One thing that I'll tell you about, it's not like Saudi Arabia. I mean, I wouldn't last 5 minutes in Saudi Arabia. In China, I'm not real worried about my physical safety. I'm more worried about a taxi hitting me than I am about the government killing me. Okay? They will send me home, and I'll be right dead in my spirit for a while until I recover. I know how I felt when I thought my last day was done. But it was like that when I went, that you really had to worry about getting caught and sent home. And like I said, there's been 12 people that I've taken over there and taught how to do that work that have been sent home and can't go back. There are Chinese in prison right now. There's been trouble every year that I've been there about somebody I know about, some church I hear about having trouble with the government. Things are a little better, but they're still the same in some ways. One beautiful thing that happened in 1998, up to that time I had to take Bibles into China and smuggle them in. They were illegal. About 93 it got better because all the business people that were coming, the economic situation, ties with China, that type of thing allowed more freedom for me because they didn't put a policeman with me on purpose just because I was a foreigner. They used to, the first 2 years, immediately when you went in the country, there's somebody following you everywhere you went. And so there were people got in trouble just for being with you. The people that came to Christ in those years, they did it with tremendous courage, knowing that they were likely to get interrogated and even put in prison, lose their job, that type of situation. In 93, they stopped doing that. I guess they realized they're going to do business with the foreigners from the West and trying to get economic advice and so forth, help. They backed off of that, so I don't have to worry about just somebody following me the moment I enter the country. I have to do something a little bit to draw attention to myself before I get in trouble. In those early years, this is just some of the dates and some of the places where I have helped to start churches. They usually start, the first 15 years is mainly evangelism and church planting, and the churches that were planted start with university students. I don't speak Chinese, so I had to locate people that spoke English. And there was a gathering place in most cities at that time where people were trying to learn English and learn it better because they knew it was a ticket out of the country or a better job if they stayed with the new Western investment that was coming in. And so you go to English Corner on Sunday morning at most major cities at a central area like a city square or a park. And you go there and 100 people would automatically gather around you just to hear you talk. I'm originally from Alabama. Most of the people that I've converted now speak Southern. All these places represent places that I've worked, and it all started from an English corner, they called it, where you make a few friends. You can't preach there. You can't really just get up and teach Bible. I do talk about spiritual things. I draw out of that crowd. I'm out there fishing, with a net. I'm trying to throw a net to somebody that's got a problem, and they hear something about marriage and how to be happy and what money is not the answer. And they ask if I'm a Christian. I say yes. Some of them can lock on to that, and they will be the ones that call me. And those that call me at the hotel, they'll come and make an appointment. They'll come and we'll study Bible. They may come because they think I'm a rich American and want to invest money. They may come because they're interested in something I said. They may come because they're a policeman. So I don't know how to sort them out, except for there's a little Chinese language lesson that shows how that there's a tie between the first 11 chapters in Genesis. All those stories you can find in the Chinese characters, those pictographs, just like the American Indian has those pictographs. The Chinese, their language is pictographs. And you can see the stories of Cain and Abel, Adam and Eve, Noah, those stories, the Tower of Babel, the flood, the creation, all can be seen in their language. And you show that to somebody, you don't have to come across to the preacher. It's just something interesting in their culture that we share. And that's a bridge that God gave to us in that culture. And so that would be a great lesson for you to have. You can use it right here in your community, your church, to build your faith, to see that lesson. So that was how we started the churches, how I got that going. And some more cities. This is not a complete map. The first one down south was concentrated on later on. I've been working a lot in this area about near Vietnam, down toward that border. And there are people converted in those cities that are now in Vietnam, Chinese preaching the gospel. Urumqi is, this is just something that's recent. I skipped over 20 years here real fast. Just let me say real quickly that my work has refocused, okay? I don't do much evangelism per se, not on purpose. I'm not going there with that intent. I'm not going there to necessarily plant a new church. I'm going to existing churches, the ones that I've started, plus many others that I've met get invitations to come and teach. And I'm teaching and training leaders, those that mature Christians or those that preach. The last trip I made, I went to 6 different cities. Preachers gathered from many different churches, and we had like a seminar planned ahead of time. You have to be really careful with it. You have to be really secretive about it. Usually go outside the cities, out in the countryside. Sometimes I'm locked in because I would draw attention out there. I just go to a building at night. They put me in there and I teach for 6 days. I don't leave the building, and then I leave at night to another place. So that's what I'm concentrating on now, is just talking to preachers and teaching them various books of the Bible, how to study, that type of thing. They've not been to they have little seminaries where they try to get together and study, but their training is not that great, and they don't have a good understanding of the Bible. So this Urumqi is a brand new place a year ago. The reason I got this contact, I was on a train way back in Shanghai on the east coast of China. Urumqi is the most landlocked place in the entire world. In other words, it's the farthest to an ocean from that particular point on the map. And it's not to the west, just to the left on the map, Kyrgyzstan is what's there. To the north is Russia. This is a Muslim territory within China. It is a minority area that's torn up with riots and killing. Right before I went, there were 600 people killed in a riot. The minority group is mostly Muslim. They were upset because the Chinese government is moving in Mandarin speaking, the main Chinese people, into this area on purpose to make them a majority over those that live there. And they're upset about it, and so there's tension that's there. I was on a train back east, and I was with another Christian lady. We were riding between Hangzhou and Shanghai going to teach 2 years ago. She was my translator. And a lady sat down next to us on the train, and she saw us with our Bible out. 20 years ago, I would not have done that. I don't have any fear about it right now. I forgot to mention, in 1998, they began publishing Bibles in China. Okay? In fact, the most incredible thing God has done. Anybody know about Chairman Mao's Little Red Book? You ever heard of that? It's an indoctrination book. All in China. It'd be like China would have been in the 1950 to 1980, just like North Korea is today. If you've seen the tears and crying for their leader, the God-type image they have, and the brainwashing that's there, that's what China was for 30 years. All right, so he had this little red book everybody memorized, okay? And they chant and make these things. Every night you'd have indoctrination classes in China for 30 years. If you didn't go, you'd be in trouble. All right, that little red book, you can go in the night markets, you still buy one for 10 cents, okay? But the place that printed those books now publishes Bibles.
Amen.
Right, and the place that publishes those Bibles, 95% of all the Bibles in the world are printed in that warehouse. In fact, if you go buy one right now, probably at the local bookstore, if you look, it might say it's printed in China. Now they export them for profit, but they do sell them in China right now. In fact, I bring Bibles from China to the U.S. because they're very cheap, and I know a lot of Chinese people here. I buy them to have English Chinese versions, that type of thing, together. A lot of the college students that are here in America going to school, they like both versions. It helps them learn English, and they can learn the Bible, and they get them interested in Christianity that way. All right, so Urumqi. A lot of the people don't look Chinese here. I've got the one girl on the left is my translator. The rest of them in the middle there, they're from the minority group there in Urumqi. Ulamuchi is how it's actually said. When you look at it, I say Urumqi, but it's Ulamuchi is how they say it. And just some of the wonderful people. These people they've got problems. They're Christianity. In fact, this lady on the train says, we've got 3 problems. Now, she was Mandarin speaking. She's only Christian for 6 months. And she says, come and help us. And she told me about her group, Mandarin speaking, but she also knew the minority, people that were Christian. She said, they've got really big problems. She had problems, but they had really big problems. Number 1, the government persecutes all Christians. Number 2, their relatives, because they were Islamic, persecuted. So they've lost all their family members. And the majority number of people in their community hate them because they're a traitor, because they believe in Jesus Christ. And number 3, they don't have the Bible in their language. There's a New Testament in their minority language. It's the language that goes back to Persia, Iran, old Iran, or Persia at the time of Daniel. Okay, so it's an old language. There's about 6 million people that speak it in that area of the world. They're working on a translation, but they don't have the whole Bible. They have Psalms and the New Testament. I think Genesis and Exodus are done. I got them that much. I brought to them 6 copies. So their leaders came, not just the whole church, but their leaders came. Just to show you a mosque right outside where we ate, call of prayer. You see the Arabic characters at the top, as well as the Chinese characters. The minority group had a manager of the hotel, 5-star hotel. I usually stay in not even any star hotel. Okay? It's the cheapest place I could get, but they got a good place because I came in and the manager just walked me up. I didn't have to show my ID, so nobody knew I was there after I got off the plane. Okay, so I was a little bit safer situation. And so this is just the people coming. It was a holiday period, so we had people from early in the morning till late at night. We studied all day long. There were many wanting baptism. They were believers before I went there, but they had never been baptized. They'd never been immersed. Some of them had been sprinkled, but not immersed. Some of them had never had either. About 7 people, even some of the preachers were wanting to be baptized. This young man right there was somebody I had met in another city that had moved there, and had contacted him, and he showed up too. It was somebody I had known in Xi'an, China, way back in the east. I just wanted to show you about baptizing, some of the methods that I used. We noticed the bathtub there in one of the pictures, and here's just a pot. This is my last trip. Just got back a few weeks ago. Very poor area out in the countryside in China. And they learned about being baptized, wanted to be baptized, and so I just instead of going all the way to the river, we just filled water in that pot, and here's a little children's swimming pool. They'll take their infants, so you can sort of teach them to swim or something like that. I found out about that, and I've started recommending that to a lot of the house churches. It doesn't not conspicuous. You can fold it up, you can carry it with you. And so most of the places that I've started have one of these already. And you can buy them for probably $20 US, something like that. And so not very expensive at all. This lady's she's 88 years old, just became a Christian. One of the things that's just shocking to me, and praise God for it, that, I worked most of my first 15 years with college students. And that's where the churches started. So all the churches I started, there were 20-year-olds and 19-year-olds and 21-year-olds. No elders for sure, right? And none of them even married, okay? They don't get married to 25, 30 years old. So after 10 years, 15 years, yeah, sure, we've got people in their 30s. They brought their parents to the Lord now. There are older people from that, but there's still a majority of younger people in the congregation that I helped start. But out of the countryside, the gospel's going crazy. I mean, the first 2 years I was there, I didn't meet a single person who had ever seen a Bible. Now, there were people there, had one hidden under a well, or locked up in an outbuilding somewhere, hidden. I remember people telling me that if there was one Bible in a village, that the Christians would come from far away, come and they would stay all day making copies of their favorite verses or find something they liked, and they would take those copies on pieces of paper back to their little house church where they were. They would sing songs to help them memorize the Scripture. So they were still there, even when there was just absolute, total persecution. But the estimate in 1949, there was 1 million, less than 1 million Christians in China. That's before all the Christians and foreign missionaries were kicked out. There were about 1 million. Today, even the government admits there's 60 million.
Ooh, amen.
Okay, that's a low estimate. That's awesome. I can tell you, it's 100 million, probably. Still out of 1.3, long way to go, right? But I guarantee you they're very dedicated people, and it is growing by the thousands every day. What has happened in the last 20 years is the book of Acts. You can just see it like filling the Roman Empire. You can see that taking place. Here's a little place, got a cross up. This is hidden behind walls and so forth. There's a rich man who pretty much gave this compound, and they formed a school to teach young people that get out of high school. They're not allowed to go to college. They don't have a job yet. There's a lot of unemployment in China. These are totally poor kids, but they come and they spend 2 years here studying Bible. I had the privilege of teaching them for 3 days. And they live there, they cook there, they eat there, they study the Bible. Very cold, there's not any heat in any of the rooms, in fact the place that you taught has an opening. We didn't have any, it was about 35 to 40 degrees, and we're working in that. Put your long johns on, your heaviest coat you can find, and that's the heaviest one I had. I think I'm real prepared for that. Look at the little chairs they sit on. You think your little fold-up chairs are uncomfortable? You think about what they're sitting on. Just some of the countryside scenes, the poverty, as you can see. These young kids, they sing, they love to study, they sit there all day long. They're happy, but yet the future, what it brings for them as far as the economy or anything like that, is not very bright. But they love God, and they inspire me. I got more out of it than I'm sure I gave to them. Look at those faces. This little boy's an orphan. He's got trouble with his feet. I think some Christian person took him in, and he's there in school. Share duties and cooking and so forth. Now you take this is one place that I went in November last year, and I spent 3 days there in this atmosphere. Now I'm going to show you some pictures that are totally different than what you just saw. Let me tell you a little background on how I got this opportunity, what I'm going to show you next. A few years ago, I realized when I was starting churches, I go into a hotel, they go to English Corner, meet some people, they come, teach them the gospel, they bring their friends, and the first thing you know, you go there, don't know anybody in the city, no one. Walk in, find out where English Corner is, you go there. A week later, after being there a week, you'd have 20, 30 people come and study Bible. I maybe have 4 or 5 baptisms that week. Come back a couple of months later, baptized 10 more, rose. You have to divide up. It's getting too big. You having to train leaders. You're having to work with them through email, things like that. We didn't have that to begin with, but the last 15 years, it's an email opportunity. Now the web's a great way. I teach Bible lessons from the U.S. 3 or 4 days a week. I get up at 5:30 in the morning, and I teach in China on Skype. I teach about 15 and 20 kids at a time. Mainly those that are mature and can speak English. I do have some lessons that have translation, but most of them I just teach the ones that can understand the most. And I can teach faster so they can teach others. So that's what I'm trying to do as far as from here when I'm home. But anyway, when you start that church, I noticed that when we talked about the family, when we talked about marriage, things like that, they would always get more of their friends to come to hear that lesson. I noticed that because one thing they don't have, their parents aren't Christians. Their parents, and even the unbelieving people, their parents don't talk to them about marriage. Probably most American parents don't either, right? About talking to kids about marriage and how to be married, and how to prepare for marriage, and it's a taboo subject almost to people today. Now we do have an advantage here in America. You got books. You can go to a bookstore and buy all kinds of books on marriage, even from a Christian perspective. That's not true in China. So young Christians don't have any role models from their parents for about Christian marriage or how to raise children. They don't have any elder in their church, any married people in their church that to give them a role model. And they don't have anybody at college or any course that's being taught in China on that subject. So they're very hungry for it. And when you teach it, they bring their friends and you have a huge crowd. Just the hotel room, have a suite, and you'll have a pretty big room. You get 60 people packed into a hotel room. You can imagine that. I said, I've got to get this message out. This is a great way to reach people because a lot of people come the first time to hear that marriage lesson, and then they would stay for other Bible lessons. They'd hear the singing, they'd see the family relationships that already developed with Christian people. And so I've got to get a bigger audience. Now, in the year 2000 to 2010, there were people that I knew that I baptized into Christ in the 90s that are now college professors. I said, I'm going to go to them and say, get me an appointment with the head of your school. I want to talk to them about the need to get some type of teaching on marriage in their curriculum. I'll tell them I'm a Christian. I'll offer them some books. I'll get them translated for them. They want me to come and speak, to give them a taste. I will come. Don't go if you're afraid. It's going to get you in trouble. But if you feel comfortable, will you do it? First lady I asked in Guangzhou, a city of 20-something million. She got on the phone. She says, lady that's in charge of that is my best friend, and if she doesn't like it, she won't get me in trouble. I know that. She'll probably like it. She called on the phone in 1 hour. I had my first appointment after I told the first person. I was on the way. I went in there and I had my PowerPoint lesson. I had basically it's the 5 love languages. You've seen that book. It's sort of just I have a slide, one slide of those 5 points, and I sort of elaborate on my speech, but on my PowerPoint I have those 5 points. I got his needs, her needs, the basic 10 principles out of that book. And then I have some scriptures actually mixed in with it, like 1 Corinthians 13, what love is. Ephesians 4, last 4 verses, it talks about how you, what affection is. If you don't have affection in marriage, let Paul describe what affection is in the last 4 verses of Ephesians 4. All right, so I told her there's some scripture here, and if you want to, I told her, the lady, if you don't want to own theirs, fine, I'll still teach my lesson. She said, I don't care. Jane, that Christian lady that I had taught, said, I trust her. Go ahead. Next time I come to China, it was all set up. I went in, had an auditorium, set up, PowerPoint. Here's a guy that's running from the law most of the time, sitting in a university with 300 people. And after that first lecture, the next time it was 900 seats for him, and it was packed to the hill. And every time I did it, there were people coming down and talking, and I would stay on campus on purpose at a hotel on campus or next to it. I'd even give my email and my Chinese cell phone number out so they can contact me. Sure enough, almost every lecture leads to conversions. Follow up. Now, from that, I try to be low-key. I try to be under the radar. Yet you can go into a Google type thing in China on the internet, type in my name. It will come up in 30 different settings on 30 different university campuses about teaching on marriage. So one of the young ladies that I met, she actually went to the state church seminary about 15 years ago. She met a lot of people there. They're in a special place now. The government recognizes certain places to worship are okay. Now, you wouldn't want to go there. It's government controlled, and the head of the church is an atheist. Now, I need to explain that maybe a little. I'm not going to take time now. That's an interesting phenomenon of the state church. It's good and it's bad. Okay, there's some good things and bad things to it. There's good people, and I don't want to leave the wrong impression. But 90% of all the believers in China meet without government approval. Okay, they won't go to the state churches, the place the state is set up to meet, because it is tightly controlled. There are some teachings, some doctrines that you cannot teach. One evident one is abortion, because that's used for child birth control. You cannot have more than one child, and if you ever taught against that principle, you would be in jail very quickly. So that's just one thing. There's many things that I can't go into detail with you now. But, all right, so this young lady had met a lot of preachers that went to that seminary, scattered all over China now. And she knew one that had gone in to be a psychiatrist, got his doctorate in psychiatry. He'd been to the little seminary for a couple of years, and they were in their early 20s. Now he's a PhD educator at a university in Jingzhou, China. She told him about me and going to all the marriage lessons. So he got in his head, when he trusted her, but he went on the internet, saw my name everywhere. You know, got a big reputation, I guess, when he did that. So he asked me, through her, to come and present a seminar at the university on psychology and marriage. Now, my major is, I got a degree in chemistry. I had one psychology course my freshman year, and I made a C, okay? And I did not like it at all. I couldn't tell you one thing I remember about that course. But anyway, it's hard for me to turn down any invitation when I have an opportunity. So I said yes. And I left these people to go into this kind of environment. That's for me when I got there. All right? And there's 300 professors from all over that province came to this. I didn't know what I was getting into. I really didn't. It was totally scared me to death when I got there. Okay, out of my league. I'm a fish out of water. I'm going to be standing not before a bunch of 19-year-olds at college teaching about marriage. I'm going to be talking to people that are high up in the government and their positions as teachers. And you have to pretty much, you know, some of the Christians get to be teachers, but you don't get anywhere unless you're a Communist Party member. There's only about 60 million Communist Party members in China. And one thing they're worried about is there's now more Christians than there are Communist Party members in China. Here's the meeting place. You see the ages. You see there's TV. There's TV, newspaper reporters. I got interviewed. And I was introduced, I learned later after it was over. There was like 5 lectures on the program. They had a little introductory thing on Friday morning. I gave my first speech on Friday night, 3 hours. That includes translation. And then the next morning again. So there was 5 speakers and 6 slots. I did 2 of them, and the others did 1 each. There were other speakers. The guy that got it together, he spoke on Saturday night. And during the day that I wasn't speaking, he had me lined up at house churches. I went out and talked to him during the day. So very, very good time use. But again, I did not really know until I got up to speak what I was going to say. Kind of humbled me. This is one of the house groups I taught while he was teaching. He also lined up across town. That was the older part of campus. They had a newer campus outside the city a little bit. And I got in more than what I'm used to. I got to speak to a group of freshmen at the university on marriage that night that was set up by him. My translator that night was not a Christian, but I have to say it was one of the nicest audiences that I could ever imagine. I've been doing a lot of the speaking in like Guangzhou and Shanghai, the big city centers, more wealthier places, and the kids have gotten more sophisticated. Back in 1991, they were so innocent, they were so hungry for just truth, like vacuums. These kids just last year reminded me of what it was like 20 years ago. Just pure hearts, and you could just go in there, and this man is working himself, even though he's a professor. He actually had his coming out that night. In his speech, he told everybody in that crowd he was a Christian. And that was pretty impressive to me that he would maybe help. I helped him even to do that. And he has some people, and they followed up with some of the contacts I made from this speech. I really enjoyed those young people. It's Sindhu, just a city I've been to about 4 times. This is not far from the earthquake area. I don't have pictures, but I actually went to outside and spent a week in the countryside by the earthquake area. In fact, I went to a city and talked. Everything was brand new because they had totally rebuilt the city since 4 years ago when there was 200,000 people killed. Everybody in the house church, they've had trouble, by the way. There's been some arrested in that house church shortly after I left. It had nothing to do with me being there. They had a bigger gathering of several churches got together, and they went up in the mountains and had a meeting for 2 days or 3 days, and they got in trouble. And they come by every Sunday now, and where I taught, where they met regularly in an apartment, and not this place, but I'm talking about back in the earthquake area. They're still having to move around from place to place every Sunday to meet, 20 people to meet together. This particular, another thing, the internet, this young lady, there was a woman teaching the Bible on the internet, and people learn about me going to China, and I get requests all the time can you go? I've got a student that wants to be baptized. They have faith now. And so whenever I match up with the city where they're at, I'll let them know I'm coming. And so this young lady came to me, referred to me from someone else. So I know I got contacts from all over the world. There's Chinese people that I've taught the gospel to that are in 14 different nations right now. And so you see they move around. The kids that I taught for earlier years, they were studying English. One of the reasons is to get to study abroad and get out of China. They were not doing it because they were Christian. They were just doing it because of economic reasons and freedom, to have a little more freedom about their life. But it has helped to spread the gospel. It hurt us in my work in China, getting it started, because you baptize these young people, you train them for a couple of years, and they graduate and they would go to get a master's degree at Yale or Harvard or some American school. There's thousands and thousands of Chinese students in this country right now doing that. And one of the things that you can even check around in your own area here, if you've got some universities or even junior colleges sometimes that have some students, and if you're not from China, you can reach other foreign students. Very nice way to do that. I can have some questions about that, or I'd like to help you get started in that ministry. There's a young lady in Allie. She's actually in Colorado Springs now. She married a guy on the internet. That's happened quite often for young ladies over there, and it's caused quite a bit of problems, actually. Out of the ones I've known over the 20 years that have done that, it's turned into pretty much disaster about 80 or 90% of the time. So I have great concern. So when she told me about this, before she did come to America, I went and met the man myself. And I made sure I met him at his house, not someplace he chose. I wanted to see him and tell him the truth about his economic situation and who he was and what's going on, and even to meet some of his family. So I'm a jack of all trades. You will not believe how many things I get into that I don't belong. I was never trained to do it. This is a young lady that got me the appointment up in Jingzhou. She knows, she gets a lot of appointments for me to preach all over China because she knows a lot of people, and she tells everybody about it. This little group right here is not near a university campus, and there's an 80-year-old woman, Christian lady, and she got purposely, she I think has some money, but she purposely got this little place near the university, so some of the university students can come and meet, have a place to meet. So you got university kids, but older people. It's like no middle age. It's all 19 years old or 79 years old that were there that day. So I really enjoyed teaching in that group as well. This is Harbin, way up north. You look in the right top, the northeast part, the very top province, the city dot there, Harbin. It's one of the coldest places you can imagine. It has the ice castles and all, the ice festival. If you ever look up Harbin, you'll see some pictures of that. Church there. There's the bus station in China, what you do when you travel. This is 6 hours north toward the Russian border. There's another school for 19-year-olds. This is becoming quite popular. They came from all over the province. They made the school just when I was there. This is only a week school. And these are 19-year-olds who want to learn more to go out and teach the gospel to others. We actually studied some of Revelation while I was there that week. There's a church building. This goes back to probably 1900. The Russian Orthodox, Greek Orthodox church. But that's a museum. It's not used by Christians today. It's a museum for the city. All those buildings were taken over, the ones that were before 1949, before the communists came. Very beautiful structure. Here's a part of a state church. This is legal. I worked with a lady there. Most of the time there's trouble. I've had trouble a lot of times when I cross over into the state church situation. Earlier days, most of the trouble we had came from people preachers from the state church that their job depends on reporting illegal activity. So I have to be pretty careful, but I trusted this lady and went and talked for her. This is actually Korean-speaking people. They're right next to North Korea, the border of China. There's a lot of Korean nationality that's in that part of China. So the lady there speaks Mandarin and Korean, does not speak English. So we went through translation both times in two different groups. Actually, 3 different groups that day I taught. Came at different times of the day. Here's some of the leaders from that city of different state churches and illegal churches. They cooperate. A lot of the state church preachers do cooperate with the illegal groups and try to help each other out. But they came there all during the weekdays. I was teaching the church workers and preachers. It just shows the Chinese hospital. It's always crowded, waiting in line to get in. There's some hot food. You like hot food? There's another group in Beijing. Here's an interesting guy. I don't know my time's going to be up here. He's what we might call a chiropractor. I'm not sure if that's an accurate definition or not. That was a translation I got. But anyway, he heals people. He has a chop he can do on your back. He did it on me. I would go to a chiropractor, and I was getting ready to lay down, taking my time. I was sitting there on the table before I even laid back down. He already whacked me. The electricity just about drove me through the wall. And I lived. I noticed about 10 seconds later after I sort of came to. But he charges about $300. Now, he gave it to me free. Because he loved you, I guess.
$200 a whack.
But amazing man. He became a Christian about 8 years ago. He's very popular. I mean, people line up to get this whack and a lot of other stuff. But I'll show you what he's done with his faith in Jesus Christ. He is well known. He's illegal. He did not register with the government, but the government just turns their eyes because he's very important to that city. And there's people come from all over China and maybe even the world to come and be attended to by him. Like I said, I don't know. I can't tell you firsthand. I didn't feel any better after he hit me, but I've been telling you worse. All right, but he built this building, and there's about 1,000 people that belong to this church. Now, only about 300 come to this particular building, but they're in villages outside. This is a really poor area here in a small city, and then you go outside of that, you got little villages, farming villages. They got little house churches there. But him and his wife, they go out and visit these little house churches all the time during the week, and then they got a place to meet on Sunday, but not everybody gets there. There's no transportation for people much. I'll show you some pictures here in a second. There's their transportation, a bicycle, and some don't have that. It's my little, here's the meeting place. I spoke there for 3 days, all day long. A lot of those ladies did come from the countryside. They came in there and they slept on the benches all night to wait for the next day's teaching. So I try not to complain about the building being hot, cold, hard seats, whatever. It teaches you a lot. I love, look at those pictures. The shocking thing is that everybody in that picture has been a Christian less than 6 years. That's astounding. Not only because of the number, but the age. Praise God.
Amen.
You know, it's a marvelous thing to see older people as well as the young. Not just the intellectuals and the college kids, but it's people that, I can go on. There's one thing about this guy. He hit me and then he fed me grasshoppers, locusts. I used to, when I teach about John the Baptist, sometimes I follow John the Baptist. John the Baptist was really weird. You know, he had his hair down to here, never cut his hair. He was 30 years old, and he ate bugs. You know, ate bugs now, and I'm gonna try letting my hair grow out. He did it again. I was there last trip, and he tried to feed me something. I ate him. Okay, I'll have to stop it more times up. Appreciate it so much. You give me the opportunity to talk to you. I didn't give you a chance for questions. I meant to. I'm sorry, but I'll stay around if you want to chat a while and talk to you. God bless all of you. Appreciate you listening. And one of the things of shockwaves that hit me about 2 months ago, I lost all my support. I had one main supporter, about 80 or 90%. And he had some financial difficulties himself, and his son had some problems, and so he's had to hold back for a while. So I don't lose sleep about it. And there has been some help been offered already, but I'll still be looking for a while. But God's blessed me all the time. I appreciate having an opportunity to come and talk to you today, and I hope that it made you aware of a place in the world that God is working as well as He is in your life, the church here, that God is working in China, and it's a wonderful thing to see a country that can change so fast. I've seen it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.